Hey everyone, it's Mike Gowland from the Sprint Zero podcast. I'm interrupting the start of this episode because I need to let you know that this episode of Sprint Zero contains explosions. I know, right? Anyway, because explosions scare people, animals, and other consultants, you'll hear this chime 10 seconds before they start, giving you enough time to adjust your volume if required, or skip over this section of the episode. Now, over to Sean.
Warning. The following scenes may contain...
Okay, we know. We've heard this. Franco, why would I sign up for this Power Pages course when there's a bunch of YouTube tutorials online?
Great question, my friend. I think the main point is, do you want to do everything the hard way, or do you want your first Power Pages project to be the resounding success it can be? So I'm offering the proven path, the best of my lessons learned, save yourself years and save your project thousands.
Nice. Oh, I'm Sean. I run the Architects Accelerator. It's an 8-week training program to help you become a solutions architect. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you how awesome it is. We're just going to hear from previous participants.
My name's Mike Colling.
My name is Sander.
Hi, I'm Danielle.
Hi, I'm Luke.
Hi, I'm Callum. I work as a senior functional consultant.
I signed up for this because it sounded something I hadn't seen anywhere else.
And that's what I liked about this course, is that we were focusing about taking the right requirement and proposing to the customer the right solution.
It's showing how to use the whole platform and how to build better solutions that could last a long time.
I don't have a background in software, and given that it's changing so fast every single day, I needed a guided way of learning. If the solution architect is the direction I want to go, I have taken something from every day of those classes and have applied them to my work.
Found it really useful and I really enjoyed it.
Use promo code SPRINT0 to get $50 off.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Sprint Zero podcast. My name is John Russell and I'm here with my co-partner crab in crime, Mike Gowland. Say hello, Mike.
Hello, Mike.
How you feeling? You feeling a bit rough today?
Rough, yeah. I went from having a cough to feeling better to now having a cough and a cold. I just can't shift it, so I'm going to sound very nasally today, I think. But
for those
show must go on.
For those of you who are listening to this, I am playing my smallest violin. Today we are joined by Emma Linton. Emma is a solution architect at Delaware and has been working in the Dynamics 365 and Power Platform space for quite a few years. I know Emma from my days back at Quantic, where we worked closely together, and I've always been impressed with her work ethic, how she gets stuff done, and her vast knowledge of the more technical sides of the platform and Dynamics. Emma loves a bit of Dungeons and Dragons roleplay in her spare time, something she's tried to get me to have a go at quite a number of times. Thanks, Emma, for coming on the podcast. How are you doing?
Hi, really well, thank you. Good to be here. I also have a bit of a cold, so apologies if I'm also a little bit nasally, but nice to be here.
No
There's
worries.
something going around.
There is.
There is indeed.
John, why won't you play Dungeons and Dragons? I've always wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons. I just never found someone to play it with.
Well, Emma will play it with you.
Okay.
Yeah, you made a
There you go.
mistake saying that. Should we just do the whole
Should we
podcast
get
about
started?
Dungeons and Dragons? Yeah, we could.
I
do
think we
that.
should just play Dungeons and Dragons for an episode.
I'll give you the link to our YouTube.
Oh, but
channel
I'm just a
later.
whimsical Power Platform consultant. I cast my radical candor on you. Anyway, Emma, nice. It's great to have you on the podcast. So, apparently, you and John go way back. Have you got any juicy stories you want to tell us about, John?
Juicy.
I mean, I know a
stories.
few myself. So,
Juicy stories. I don't know if I've got juicy stories. I do have a favourite memory of John.
Oh, nice. Why we got her on? Why we got her on?
Well,
Continue.
I have to say that there is something I always really admired and I'm always really amazed at with John, and that is that the things that frighten me to death, he just does without thinking. And then the things that I can just do and not think about and don't stress about, he'll have a full-scale meltdown about. And we're sort of quite different in that way. But there was a perfect example of this. I love that John will put himself out there to just make everybody feel better. And he's always happy to almost be the one that people are laughing at so that everybody then is happy and is having a good time. We did a Christmas quiz. John did a Christmas quiz. And we'd had a really stressful year. It had been a Yeah, sorry, can I say that on this podcast?
Oh, you can
Yeah, you
absolutely
can, yeah.
say that on
It
this
had
podcast.
it had been terrible, and we were all massively stressed coming up to Christmas. And John said, "I'll do a quiz, and I'll do like different rounds." And he did this music round. And my teenage son came upstairs to see what was going on because I was laughing so hard. I mean, I was crying. I nearly fell off the chair. The whole point of this, John had his headphones on, and he was the only one that could hear the music. But then he was supposedly singing along to the music, and we had to guess what the music was. And I think it was the worst version of karaoke I've ever heard in my entire life. And yeah, I couldn't hold it together.
Oh, John, did you do the club singer round?
Yeah, something like that. I think it was worse.
It was genius. I still have a recording of it somewhere because every now and then, if I want to laugh, I take it out. But it was just what everybody needed because we were all just so stressed coming up to Christmas. And just that, that was brilliant, that quiz. You had us carving faces out of potatoes and just watching clips that a mate of yours had done, like guess the film. It was genius. So that's my favourite memory, I think, of John.
Nice.
So I've got my favourite memory. I'm actually just going to show it on screen, but it's of this. Can you see that?
Oh. What on earth? That's fireworks.
What I love about this is John goes some near-death experience, and if you just wait about 10 seconds, it then jumps to John being super casual.
Brilliant.
That video that was last October or whatever, November, and so Katie, my wife, had set up some of these kind of fireworks between these two rocks, and it had like a really kind of short fuse. Now, I should have really learned from the last time that I lit a firework that I shouldn't really be lighting fireworks. Apologies to number 32 Goodwin Gardens in Deal and your shed catching fire. But basically, I lit it and I didn't think it was lit. You know, the hissing and the fizzing of the fuse should have given it away. And then I run away, but fall over and stack it on the floor as it's going off. And there's my sister-in-law. You can hear her going, "Jesus Christ!" Oh, that was bad.
Brilliant. I remember where and when I was when I found that when you sent me that video.
It was one of those moments, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So, Emma, thank you very much for the lovely words. I appreciate that. Could you tell us a little bit more about your journey into Power Platform and Dynamics, and how did you get to kind of where you are now?
Okay, so I'm quite old and I've been in IT a long time. I was working this out. I've been in IT for 35 years this year. But I've only really been doing Dynamics and Microsoft stuff for the last 6 or 7. And I was running a really small team at a housing association and looking after their housing system. And they decided they wanted, a CRM, and they wanted to integrate with that CRM. And somebody picked Dynamics 2016 on-prem, and my team got the joy of implementing it, knowing nothing about Dynamics at that point, and knowing nothing about any kind of system. And we got a company that was quickly bought out by IBM. They came along to implement this system, and I put my foot down and said, "No, you're not just going to turn up and build it and leave. You're going to teach us how while you're here." So that was sort of my first introduction to Dynamics, and I ended up then going and working for IBM, just because I really wanted to know more and I wanted to get more hands-on. And I did start off actually as a programmer. I was a COBOL programmer way back in the depths of history. So I liked the idea of getting a bit more hands-on and a bit more technical with it. But really, I think it was probably at Quantic. When I joined Quantic, I went in as a senior functional consultant for the CE side, and they just introduced Power Automate. And to a bit of a programmer and a bit of a geek, that was like music to my ears. I decided I was going to just go with the latest stuff. I was going to go with the new UI, not the old one, and I was going to use Power Automate, not workflows. And yeah, I still have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Power Automate. I'm still quite happy in a dark room doing Power Automates all day, and then trying
Yeah.
not to throw the computer
And
out
we
the
all,
window. But
yeah, I get
but
very sweary. I get very sweary with Power Automate.
yeah, so that was sort of my introduction to it. And then sort of worked my way up through Quantix. So went from senior to a team lead, and then ended up being one of the people managing the team of the CE side for Quantic. Um, and then did a bit of a sideways move and said, actually, I really love Power Platform. Let's get into that. So spent most of 2022 being a Power Platform consultant, and built a portal, built a PVA chatbot, did some nice Canvas apps, and really enjoyed that. I don't get enough of that, I don't think, now in the job that I'm doing. I'm very much on the CE side at the moment. I've managed to create a couple of little embedded Canvas apps, which made me happy. But yeah, a lot of the stuff I do now is on the CE side. But yeah, huge fan of Power Platform. I think the world's your oyster. I think on that side, it makes me excited.
Definitely. Emma, how was that transition going from being a programmer to being a consultant?
It happened over many years, to be honest. So I was a COBOL programmer for a few years, and then I ended up being sort of basic IT support. This is right back at the start of my career, and I was working for the education department at Manchester Council. So that was way back when we had modems and floppy disks, and and we were making network cables because the network was in an office, not across the whole building, and that kind of thing. So I think my journey's been a bit of. I think I've probably done nearly every job you can imagine now that's customer facing. I went from doing support into consultancy and training, project management. I've managed teams of consultants and trainers. And then it was really when I got back to the housing association that I was just talking about. That's 7 or 8 years ago. Actually, there was a requirement to pick up some Oracle PLSQL, and I'd actually done some of that at the start, so I ended up getting a little bit back into the programming there. Um, I don't know. I really love coding. I'm not the best programmer in the world, but I have a real geeky side, and I love that part of the job. But I think actually what I also really love is the customer facing stuff. So sitting down with a customer, working out what their problem is, coming up with solutions, all of that good stuff. I get a real buzz out of that. So maybe I'm a bit
Yeah,
of a split personality. There are times I want to just sit and build things, and other times that I want that real interaction.
I remember the first time. I think it was the first time we met in person,
Yeah.
because it was obviously I started at Quantic when it was like middle of COVID, really, and
Yeah.
we went down to London, didn't we, for it was like a retirement home company, and we were all sat round the table, and you were running the workshop, and I was like, it's the first time I'd really seen a workshop in person, and I was like, yeah, this is really good. Like you were really good, and how you like kind of controlled the room but not controlled the room, like all those kind of little nuances that are like really important in consultancy. Yeah,
Thank you.
that was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I enjoy that stuff. I do really like it, and I think I miss actually the face-to-face workshops. It's quite nice now that people are starting to get back together for that kind of thing, because you can run workshops over Teams, but it's just not the same as actually being in a room with someone and putting forward suggestions and seeing the reaction on their face, and getting the body language. I just don't think it's the same over Teams.
So, Emma, what do you think are the top 3 skills that that are paramount for any aspiring solution architects to have?
Okay, so I'm going to start off with what's not maybe necessary, and then I'll talk about what I think is important, because I put off even applying to be a solution architect for a very long time, and that was because I didn't think I was technical enough. And a lot of the solution architects that I knew had all this infrastructure knowledge. They were really hot on Azure. They knew all about API endpoints and they knew how to set them up from scratch. And I was like, I can't do that. That's just not for me. But actually, I would say it's really about, for me, it's about the problem solving, the being able to analyze a problem and look at the solutions and work out and weigh up, what's the best solution and how do I present this back to the customer, which is the best one for them. I would also say a really good understanding of project methodology. I think I did a very short stint as a project manager, and I have in the past been qualified on both Prince 2 and like agile project management methodologies. And I find that gives me a really good understanding of what's going on. Why is this happening now? What are we trying to do? What's the actual aim? Sometimes you go into a meeting and it's like, what's the outcome that you really want to get from this? I think understanding projects and the whole life cycle of a project, for me, that's really key. For senior consultants, I'd say as well, actually, it's just a really good bit of knowledge to have. But then most of what I do is communication. And I'm now smiling because I'm thinking people are going to hear this podcast and go, oh my God. But communication with people, being able to build a relationship and build some trust. Because at the end of the day, you're going to tell them what they can and can't have, or how something's going to be, or how you're going to meet their requirements. And they've got to trust that you can do that. And that when you say it can be done, it can. And when you say, well, it can't be done, they have to believe that you're telling the truth. That you're going to do the best thing for them and that you're not just there to make money out of them. So I think for me, that all those communication skills, all those soft skills that I built up over the years, that they're probably what I use the most. And every now and then technical stuff does crop up and I go, oh my God, I don't know that. And then you go, okay, well, how do I learn? And you go away and find out. Someone will have done it, or there'll be a blog, or there'll be, a website somewhere that'll explain it to you. So I think less and less now, there's less emphasis on being an expert in all the technical stuff and just knowing it, and it's more about how do you find the answer and how do you communicate the answer. I think so that's what I would say.
Do you think soft skills, or as we like to term them, essential skills, do you think they can be taught?
I'm going to say yes, but I don't think it's something you can just sit in a classroom and learn. I think it's a combination of witnessing it, so seeing how somebody else does something, because there's no one way of doing it, I don't think. So seeing other people do things and going, oh, I love the way they did that, or I really like how they phrased that, or I've been in a couple of meetings with people where they've handled a really difficult conversation. I think it was a project manager, and she just handled the customer so well. And you sort of come out of that going, I'm going to remember that I'm going to use that next time. That's what I'm going to do. So I think it's that, but it's also, I'm a real firm believer in, sometimes you just have to try something. You just have to put yourself out there. You'll learn really quickly what works and what doesn't. And you then just have to take the things that worked and take them forward and learn from the mistakes. I don't think you can sit someone in a classroom and go, this is how to be the perfect, workshop facilitator. I think it's real trial and error, and it's having a good peer group of support around you and people that are willing to give you really honest and good constructive feedback as well. Yeah. Sorry. Rose up.
Yeah, come on, John. Get on with the questions.
Yeah, sorry. I was just
I wowed him
reveling
with
in that
my insight.
So you recently got up on stage to speak to over 200 people on International Women's Day. I mean, that is, I know you really well, and I know that you would have been, for want of a better phrase, bricking it.
Yeah.
But that is an epic achievement doing that. Like that's a big deal. How did you find it? Like, how did you find it before, and how did you find it during, and how did you find it afterwards?
Okay. So you're right. I was terrified before. I was very, very nervous. Um, and I think the reason that I was nervous is partly, and I mean, you've seen me do webinars and things before, John, and I'm one of those people that if I know the software that I'm demoing, I'll wing it. I don't write a script out. I don't, I have a process that I'm following. I know what I want to say, and then it won't be the same, each time I do it. It'll be slightly different each time. But this was a completely different subject. The bit that I was talking about was all about um, diversity and inclusion, but we were talking specifically around unconscious bias. And I was talking about unconscious bias in education, in sort of schools, and how it affects kids and exams and all of those things. So I'd had to sort of write a script. And that speech had to be under 10 minutes, and I had to say the right things on the right slides, and it had to be very, very structured. And I found that so much harder than I thought I was going to. So even the night before, I was still lying in bed running through the words and trying to get the words right and timing myself. Because I just really wasn't sure I could do it. And I think standing up even in front of the other women who were going to speak, I think the rehearsal day, the day before, I was still physically shaking while I was delivering the rehearsal. So it's a while since I've been that nervous. I'm not a fan of not necessarily a fan of getting up on stage in front of 200 people generally, but I was very, very nervous. And I think the other thing was that there was a message that I was trying to give at the end of that speech that was a bit of a shock moment, and I didn't know how the audience was going to react, and that also made me quite nervous and scared. When we got to the day, I think I went into a bit of a weird sort of. I remember sitting and watching the lady that was on before me on stage doing her stuff and doing a brilliant job. And I went into this weird sort of zone where it was like, well, I'm doing it now. I'm here now. I can't just not do it. So I'm just going to have to get up and say my stuff, and it's just going to happen. And there was almost a let's try not to even think about it, because I'm just going to go and I'm going to do what I do. And there's nothing more I can do now that's going to make it any better. So, and I think during, I do remember bits of it, but I feel like I was having some kind of out of body experience. It was like I said all the stuff I needed to say. I watched the recording back and I didn't mess anything up. I didn't fall off the stage, which was a big plus. So I think I did okay, but I think I just went through the motions on the day. And then afterwards, I was really proud of myself. And that's not something that I say very often.
No.
I really felt like I'd achieved something huge for me, and sort of proved that I could do something that I wouldn't normally have done.
Yeah.
So
I saw the photos and stuff, and like you could tell that you could tell that it was it was a big thing. It was really impressive. Yeah.
thanks, babe. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
scary, but I mean, I had moments a couple of months before where I was like, I think I'm gonna have to pull out of this. I don't think I can do it. And it was such a lot of prep and such a lot of work. And the actual final presentation was like version 10 or 11. I mean, it was unrecognizable from the first one. So I did feel like it was a really big achievement. I felt really proud of myself for being involved
Nice.
as well. And International Women's Day, it's something that's really close to my heart. That whole, women in tech and STEM and education. It's something that I really care about. So which is possibly why I was
What
also
was
terrified.
what was if you don't mind sharing, what was the shock part that you spoke about?
So at the very end, so I'd been talking all the way through about how teachers' unconscious bias affects children's performance. And then I sort of moved that into the fact that obviously bullying is about bias as well. People will be biased towards you for your size or your colour or your shape or your hair or your glasses or whatever. And I ended up with 2 photographs of Brianna Jai and Sophie Lancaster. And obviously, Brianna Jai is the girl that was murdered last year by her classmates because she was transgender. Although I think they were just looking for somebody to murder, but they picked her because she was trans. And Sophie Lancaster is a girl from just down the road from where I live. She was murdered in 2007 for being a goth. And she
Yeah.
was basically beaten, kicked to death in a park by 14-year-olds
Yeah.
because she was a
Oh.
goth. And my kids knew some of her friends, so we weren't like close to it, but friends of a friend kind of thing. We knew when it happened.
Yeah.
So that was like the last slide that I finished on, was like, this couldn't be so much worse. Bang, here's 2 pictures of 2 murdered girls. And I just really didn't know if that was going to drop the mood. Do you know what I mean? Is that just going to like wreck the whole atmosphere in the room, and how are people going to respond to that? And yeah, there were a couple of people who came up afterwards and said, actually, that was really brave, but it made such a big impact. It really made people stop and think, which was what I was after.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah.
good. Yeah. Well done for doing it and
Thank
going
you.
through to the end. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Emma, we have this section on the show, which you may have already covered by doing the talk to 200 people on International Women's Day, and it's called Uncomfortable Corner.
Uncomfortable Corner.
So, Emma, when
That
was the
screams
last
my
time
cat.
you felt uncomfortable in or out of work? Go on, John. Go, you got to get
Sorry,
out, John. Come on.
I'm just saying that screams my cat.
Okay, I'm glad you're not
Oh, if
murdering
only
people
you
in the
knew the
background.
truth, John.
Oh, is it your llama?
It's my goat. Yeah.
Oh wow. Last time I felt uncomfortable. There's a couple of things in
Not
my
just
head.
on this podcast,
Not
but
just
out.
now. Yeah. not
This
just now.
podcast?
I was going to say there's a couple of things here, right? I think there's a lot of instances where I feel mildly uncomfortable, but I don't always think that's a bad thing. I think sometimes when
No.
you are trying to step out of your comfort zone, you're going to feel like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm here. Am I saying the right thing? And that, I don't think, I try not to hide from that, right? Because you could easily go and hide in a corner and just never do that stuff. I try not to hide from that. And that does happen at work frequently. I think a couple of weeks ago, I was in a meeting. I was the only Delaware representative on the call, and they were talking about some really technical, networky, tenant-to-tenant migration stuff that I could give you the words, but I don't really understand the background to it. And I was so out of my depth, completely out of control, and hated every second of it. And I think sometimes you just have to sort of manage through that. And then, unfortunately, it was a meeting as well that I hadn't had any notice of, so I hadn't had time to prepare anything in advance. So I try to prepare for meetings, and I try to get as much knowledge as I can. And I have a really good network of people around me where I can afterwards go, what did they mean when they said this? And was I really as
Yeah.
stupid there as I thought I was? Do I really not understand this? I mean, it turned out that I actually knew more than I thought I did on that call, but that's not nice. I think the other type of uncomfortable, and the one that I really don't enjoy, is that I go a lot of gut feeling. So I have gut feelings about situations, and even gut feelings about the way something should work, right? The way that something should feel to a user. And it's a couple of years ago now, but I was involved in a team. We were building a Canvas app, and we were trying to change the UI of the Canvas app and the way that it worked and the way that it looked. And they put this screen up, and I just hated it, absolutely hated it, and said that I hated it. Well, there was only 3 of us on the call. We were really close colleagues, and I just said, that's awful. I don't like it. It's just wrong. But when they said why, I couldn't answer them. And I couldn't get the logic in my head to match up with the gut feeling. And then, of course, they were like, well, what if we do this? Well, what if that happens? Well, we could change this color. Well, we could move this up here. And I just felt completely almost bombarded then with very valid, logical questions that I couldn't answer. And it almost sent me into a bit of a panic. I remember at the time getting really, really het up. And I had to say, can you just give me 5 minutes? Just let me step away, take a bit of a breath, really think about it, and come back. And we did eventually get to something that they thought was much better than where we'd started off. And it was because I'd gone, I don't like that. But I do find sometimes I need that time to, I'll have a really uncomfortable gut feeling. I can't always tell you why. And usually I'm right. But so I've learned to listen to that gut feeling. But it can take me a bit of time to get what's in my head matched up with what's in my heart and to understand what's really going on and to analyze where that uncomfortable feeling's coming from. I mean, it's a work in progress. It's something that I'm working on.
Is that because your gut feeling is your subconscious?
Maybe. I think I went
And
through a
it's kind
period
of
of time.
it's kind of like quite deep down, and you've got to get that kind of out of there to.
Well, I think I went through a period of time where I had thought that maybe I was wrong to listen to my gut feelings. And I would try and shove them aside with logic. And, I'd go, okay, I feel that way about that thing, but that's just because, it's just the way I'm feeling. And logically, this makes sense. And I should go with the logic and, I should let my head rule, basically. And then I've had a number of occasions where I've gone, oh, damn, no, actually, I should have listened. I should have listened to myself. I did know that. And there's instances personally and, in terms of even like where you want to work, the people you want to work with, who you're friends with, all of those kinds of things. I think I've found over the years now that if I'm not feeling right about something, I might not be able to tell you why straight away, but there's something and I need to dig further into that. So I do now go, okay, let's still use the logic, but let's dig into what was it that made me feel uncomfortable? Where did that come from? And then make a logical analysis.
And how do you convey that to people that are waiting on an answer then?
Luckily, it happens less often from a work situation where, there's a deadline. But I usually do just say, look, I need some time to think about this. I need to take this away, especially if it's something important, then I don't want to get this wrong. And I need time to go and think. I do also talk. I have a number of people that I really trust, and I'll go and say, is this just me? am I just being a little bit paranoid about this, or am I making stuff up here? And I'll get their point of view on it as well. But yeah, usually I mean I've had a couple of big things recently, and it's taken me a couple of days to really step back and go, what's really going on here? But yeah, like I said, I used to try and ignore them, and now I'm like, no, there's a good reason. It's a good reason that I'm feeling odd or uncomfortable, or that something's not quite right.
Gut feeling is pretty crazy, really. And it's normally pretty accurate, usually.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not, but most of the time, 95% of the time it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not something you can put your finger on, is it? You can't really explain to somebody else why you've got. I remember I've got an adult son, and he's got a friend that I just don't like. And he'll say, why don't you like him? I'm like, I don't know. I just don't like him. But he's not my friend, and it doesn't matter. And so, I'm not telling him not to be friends with him. Doesn't matter. But he's baffled, and I can't explain to him why. There's just something I don't like about that person. So
yeah, it's how I feel about Mike, really, most of the time. Only joking.
I mean, when I interviewed for you for ALS, John, I did think there was something not quite right about this guy, but I had to bring him on.
Yeah, well, that's why you hired me, you crazy person. Right, so thank you very much, Emma, for being on the podcast. We really appreciate you taking the time. You can find Emma on LinkedIn and at your nearest Dungeons and Dragons showroom. Links to that sounds really bad, doesn't it?
A Dungeons and Dragons showroom.
There are no Dungeons and Dragons showroom. Yeah.
So I've never played it, but I know they don't have showrooms. They're not selling cars.
Showrooms.
Happy to run a game for you anytime, Mike, if you want to learn how.
Yeah, thank you.
Links to resources mentioned in this episode will be in the show notes. Music today was provided by our good friend Ken Like Fit. You can find his music on Spotify, the link to which you'll find in the show notes. Additional music used in the episode is also credited there. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss the next episode. And we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a follow on LinkedIn and, cheeky 5-star review on your chosen Spotify podcast platform, whatever. What are the other ones that we're on, Mike?
We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Deezer.
What's that really obscure one?
Castbox.
Like Abacus or something.
Yes, Castbox, Ccast.
Right.
Everywhere.
We go into like some of the dark corners of the podcasting world.
Indeed. So apart from the ones that are in the dark corners, Spotify, just go and give us a 5-star on there. So this has been the Sprint Zero podcast. We've been Mike Gowland. Say goodbye, Mike.
You almost said John Russell, didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah. Bye, Mike.
And Emma Linton. Say goodbye, Emma.
Goodbye.
And I'm John Russell, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you very much.
Love you, John.
Love you, Mike. Love you, Emma.
Right, we'll get that Dungeons and Dragons game set up.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
I'm Sean. I run the Architects Accelerator. It's an 8-week training program to help you become a solutions architect. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you how awesome it is. We're just going to hear from previous participants.
My name's Mike Colling.
My name is Sander.
Hi, I'm Danielle.
Hi, I'm Luke. Hi, I'm Callum. I work as a senior functional consultant.
I signed up for this because it sounded something that I hadn't seen anywhere else.
And that's what I liked about this course, is that we were focusing about taking the right requirement and proposing to the customer the right solution.
It's showing how to use the whole platform and how to build better solutions that could last a long time.
I don't have a background in software. And given that it's changing so fast every single day, I needed a guided way of learning. If the solution architect is the direction I want to go, I have taken something from every day of those classes and have applied them to my work.
Found it really useful and really enjoyed it.
Use promo code SPRINT0 to get $50 off.